Gang movies have always been one of my favorite subgenres. Sangre por Sangre, Menace to Society, and Bichote have been some of my favorite movies since I was a kid. But for me, City of God was always my favorite. Gangs often form in areas with high poverty rates, and stories revolving around them are good ways to explore themes like the cycle of violence, societal oppression, and the hopelessness of extreme poverty like the rampant cases throughout South America. I find that, especially if you're from a westernized country, it's good to engage with art from outside of your bubble, but even more so when you discuss things like poverty. You can have an idea of what poverty can be based on your own experiences in your own country, but there is no way of really knowing just how bad it can get in different parts of the world. Of course, there are many films about poverty, most notably Bichote, Los Olvidados, or Jerónima, but I find that this is still one of the most accessible to international audiences, so here are 3 reasons why City of God is so good. 1. A realistic depiction of violence and its cycle. Where there is poverty, there is violence, and this movie depicts it about as brutally realistic as it can get. From random murders in the street to a young boy being forced to shoot even younger boys, the entertainment or comedy some movies might derive from acts of violence are noticeably absent here. The camera lingers on the dead bodies of children that litter the streets, and as we move closer, we realize it's characters that we've met before. I compare this movie's depiction of violence to others because in stories like this, it's important to accurately portray the situation at hand, as watering down any of the acts would be in a sense disrespectful to those actually affected by them. The randomness, suddenness, and brutality of death are all presented to us in a way that makes the violent scenes also some of the most emotional and disturbing. The cycle of violence is also presented here with many characters. It's not necessarily a groundbreaking thing to say what goes around comes around, but I feel like it was woven into the story in a very unexpected way, with certain things being caught on a second viewing and others coming as really unexpected. I won't spoil the ending for you, but like most gang films, it's not a happy one for everyone. 2. The city as a character. There are movies where the setting itself can start to feel alive, and City of God really makes the Brazilian slums feel like a living thing. It grows, literally changing color from the sunny days of Rocket's youth to the cold and harsh present-day reality of a city torn apart by a pointless war. Characters are spread throughout, and although we don't really spend too much time on certain people, we still get a sense that they are real. A character like Thiago gets introduced as a guy Rocket doesn't really like who's dating the girl he has a crush on, then a friend of Benny's who gets him nice clothes, then becomes a junkie constantly getting served cocaine by steak and fries, and finally becoming a soldier for Little Zay's drug empire. Although we don't actually spend too much time on just him alone, we get to watch his character fall into worse and worse habits. And even when certain characters like the Tender Trio do get a lot of screen time, it adds on to the present day by giving you the same history as the characters. The story of the Tender Trio makes up about the first fourth of the movie, although most of them meet their end pretty quickly. But as we watch the characters grow, it helps contextualize just how bad the current situation has gotten. We're comparing the drug war back to the quote-unquote good old days, where 3 teenagers non-fatally robbed gas trucks and brothels. And it honestly helps make this movie even better on a rewatch. I didn't even realize until my 3rd viewing that Knockout Ned was introduced to us in the background at least 3 times before the story actually gives him a name. It also helps that the story doesn't follow a strict structure, and the aliveness of the city kind of lets us feel like we're drifting from story to story. 3. The execution. The entire movie is shot in this very documentary-style approach, making the film feel all the more real thanks to co-director Katja Lund. Katja Lund has also directed the 1999 documentary News from a Personal War about the violence in Brazil between kids, gangs, and cops, in which nobody comes out on top. In the opening scene alone, we feel the frantic mood of the city due to many quick cuts of a chicken watching other chickens get butchered. Chasing the chicken down, we get to maybe one of the most iconic shots of the film, which in turn flashes us back to the happier past, symbolized by a brighter and cheerier color grading. The film is broken into many chapters. We get interesting narration from our protagonists, and there is so much different camera work done, the film never stalls and never really gets boring. We jump from past to present and then back again, and it never gets confusing. The decision to use real kids that grew up in this area lends the film a certain sense of authenticity to the experiences portrayed on screen. There are a lot of things that can go wrong in the process of making a movie, but the ultimate execution of this film is damn near perfect. And that's it. If you haven't seen this movie yet, I highly recommend you do watch it, and if you already have, maybe consider a rewatch. I remember the first time I watched this movie was on Christmas Eve, and I couldn't fall asleep, and I needed to do something, so I put this movie on. And even though I was already exhausted, I just couldn't fall asleep until the movie was over. I liked it so much that I even tried learning Portuguese, even though I gave up like 2 weeks later. It's one of my absolute favorites for many reasons, so I hope you've been convinced. Alright, that's it from me. I'll see you next time. Peace.